The grand ballroom of Astoria Palace sparkled under the light of 1,000 crystal chandeliers. Tonight marked the first official state dinner since Princess Elena had married Prince Alexander 6 months ago. The entire royal court buzzed with excitement and anticipation as nobles from across the kingdom gathered to witness this momentous occasion. Queen Isabella stood at the head of the receiving line, her silver crown catching the light as she greeted each guest with practiced grace. She had ruled Astoria for 25 years, and her presence commanded respect from everyone in the room. Her deep blue gown flowed elegantly around her as she moved, every gesture speaking of decades of royal training and natural authority. Captain Marcus stood at attention near the throne, his hand resting on the ceremonial sword at his side. As the head of the royal guard, he had served the crown faithfully for 15 years. His sharp eyes constantly scanned the crowd, noting every movement and interaction. Marcus had seen many royal ceremonies, but something felt different about tonight. There was intention in the air that he couldn't quite identify. Prince Alexander entered the ballroom with his new wife, Princess Elena. The young prince looked handsome in his formal military uniform, but his usual confident smile seemed forced tonight. Elena walked beside him, stunning in her emerald green gown that complemented her auburn hair perfectly. However, her posture was rigid, and her green eyes held a determined gleam that Marcus recognized as trouble. The couple approached Queen Isabella, and the entire room fell silent. This moment had been planned for weeks, the formal presentation of the new princess to the court. According to centuries of royal protocol, Elena was expected to perform the traditional curtsy before the queen, acknowledging Isabella's supreme authority over the kingdom. Prince Alexander bowed deeply before his mother, his movements smooth and respectful. The court waited for Elena to follow suit. Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes, as Elena stood perfectly still, her chin raised slightly. She met Queen Isabella's gaze directly, neither defiant nor submissive, but somehow both. "Your Majesty," Elena said simply, offering only the slightest nod of her head instead of the expected deep curtsy. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled nobles. Marcus felt his muscles tense automatically, his training kicking in as he sensed potential trouble. Queen Isabella's expression remained composed, but Marcus caught the slight tightening around her eyes, a sign he had learned to recognize over the years. "Princess Elena," Queen Isabella replied, her voice calm but carrying an undertone that everyone in the room could feel. "How lovely to see you this evening." The queen's words were polite, but Marcus knew her well enough to hear the ice beneath the courtesy. Prince Alexander's face had gone pale, and he shot a worried glance at his wife. The other courtiers began whispering behind their fans and gloved hands, the sound creating a low buzz throughout the ballroom. Duke Richardson, one of the Queen's oldest advisors, stepped forward slightly. His weathered face showed clear disapproval as he watched Elena with narrowed eyes. "Perhaps the princess is not feeling well," he suggested loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Surely she would not intentionally disregard our sacred traditions." Elena turned to face the Duke, her expression remaining serene. "I feel quite well. Thank you for your concern, Your Grace. I simply chose to greet Her Majesty in the manner I felt most appropriate." The boldness of her response sent another wave of shocked murmurs through the crowd. Marcus stepped forward slightly, not threateningly, but positioning himself where he could intervene if necessary. He had never seen anyone openly challenge royal protocol in such a public setting. Queen Isabella raised her hand slightly, and the room fell silent immediately. "I see," she said carefully. "Perhaps we might continue our conversation privately after dinner." It was not a request, and everyone present understood this. Elena nodded graciously, as if she had expected nothing less. "Of course, Your Majesty. I would be honored." As the royal family moved toward the dining hall, Marcus caught sight of Lady Catherine, the Queen's lady-in-waiting, hurrying to Isabella's side. The older woman's face was flushed with indignation, and she whispered urgently in the Queen's ear. Isabella listened without changing expression, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. Throughout dinner, the atmosphere remained strained. Elena participated in conversations with apparent ease, discussing literature and politics with the other nobles as if nothing unusual had happened. But Marcus noticed how Prince Alexander barely touched his food, and how Queen Isabella's responses grew shorter as the evening progressed. Lord William, the kingdom's treasurer, leaned across the table toward Elena during the second course. "Princess, I must say your gown is absolutely stunning this evening. Is it perhaps from the designer in the capital?" "Thank you, Lord William. Actually, I designed it myself," Elena replied with a genuine smile. "I've always enjoyed creating things with my own hands." This revelation caused another stir among the ladies present. It was unusual for a princess to design her own clothing, as most relied on the kingdom's finest dressmakers. Lady Margaret, known for her sharp tongue, couldn't resist commenting. "How industrious of you, Princess. Though I imagine you'll find court life leaves little time for such hobbies." Elena's smile never wavered. "On the contrary, Lady Margaret, I believe we should never be too busy to pursue the things that bring us joy and express our individuality." Marcus found himself intrigued despite the protocol breach. There was something refreshingly honest about Elena's responses, even if they were causing quite a scandal. He had grown accustomed to the careful, measured words that usually characterized royal conversations. As the evening wore on, Marcus noticed Prince Alexander making several attempts to speak privately with his wife, but each time Elena smoothly redirected him into conversations with other guests. She seemed determined to maintain her composure and continue as if nothing unusual had occurred. The final course was being served when Marcus overheard Duke Richardson speaking quietly to Lord William. "This is unprecedented," the Duke was saying. "Such behavior cannot be allowed to stand. It undermines the very foundation of our monarchy." "Perhaps she simply needs time to adjust," Lord William suggested diplomatically. "Marriage into the royal family is a significant change for anyone." "Adjustment is one thing," Duke Richardson replied sharply. "Deliberate disrespect is quite another." Marcus realized that Elena's actions had created more than just a moment of social awkwardness. Her refusal to follow protocol was being interpreted as a direct challenge to the Queen's authority, and in a monarchy, such challenges could have serious consequences. As dessert was being cleared away, Queen Isabella stood, signaling the end of the formal dinner. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "thank you all for joining us this evening. Princess Elena, if you would accompany me to my private study, there are matters we should discuss." Elena rose gracefully, her composure still intact. "Of course, Your Majesty." As the two women left the dining hall together, Marcus felt compelled to follow at a discreet distance. His duty was to protect the royal family. But tonight he wasn't sure if the greater threat came from outside the palace walls or from within them. The tension between Queen Isabella and Princess Elena was unmistakable, and Marcus knew from experience that unresolved conflicts within the royal family could have far-reaching consequences for the entire kingdom. The evening that had begun with such promise now felt heavy with unspoken challenges and uncertain outcomes. As Marcus positioned himself outside the Queen's study, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger story. Queen Isabella's private study was a sanctuary of dark mahogany shelves lined with leather-bound books and family portraits spanning generations. The room smelled of jasmine tea and old parchment, creating an atmosphere that usually brought the Queen comfort. Tonight, however, the familiar surroundings felt charged with tension as she faced her newest daughter-in-law. Elena stood near the window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens below. Her emerald gown rustled softly as she turned to face the queen, her expression calm but guarded. Isabella settled into her favorite armchair, gesturing for Elena to take the seat across from her. "Please sit down, Elena. We need to discuss what happened tonight." Elena moved gracefully to the offered chair, but remained standing. "Your Majesty, I prefer to stand, if that's acceptable." Isabella studied the young woman before her. Even now, Elena was maintaining control over the situation in small ways, refusing to be positioned as a subordinate. It was both impressive and frustrating. "Very well," Isabella replied. "Perhaps you could explain why you chose to disregard centuries of established protocol tonight. Your behavior has caused quite a stir among the court." Elena clasped her hands in front of her, meeting Isabella's gaze directly. "I meant no disrespect to you personally, Your Majesty. My actions were about something much deeper than court etiquette." "Indeed? And what might that be?" For the first time that evening, Elena's composed facade showed a crack. Her jaw tightened slightly, and Isabella caught a glimpse of genuine emotion beneath the polished exterior. "I cannot bow to anyone, Your Majesty, not because I don't respect you, but because I made a promise to someone very important to me." Isabella raised an eyebrow. "A promise that supersedes your obligations as a member of this royal family?" Elena's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "A promise to my grandmother, who raised me after my parents died. She made me swear on her deathbed that I would never bow my head to anyone, no matter the circumstances." The queen leaned back in her chair, processing this unexpected revelation. "Your grandmother? I was told your parents died when you were very young, but I know little about who raised you." "Grandmother Mira was extraordinary," Elena said softly, her voice warming with memory. "She was born a commoner, but became one of the most respected scholars in our neighboring kingdom. She taught me that true respect comes from one's actions and character, not from the angle of one's curtsy." Isabella found herself intrigued despite her frustration. "That's a beautiful sentiment, Elena, but you must understand that royal protocol exists for important reasons. It maintains order and respect within our system of government." Elena moved closer, her eyes bright with passion. "But what if that system is built on the wrong foundations, Your Majesty? What if we could create something better?" Before Isabella could respond, a soft knock interrupted their conversation. Captain Marcus's voice came through the door. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but there's been a development that requires your immediate attention." Isabella sighed, recognizing the tone that Marcus used only for truly urgent matters. "Come in, Marcus." The captain entered, his usually composed demeanor showing signs of strain. He glanced between the Queen and Princess Elena before speaking. "Your Majesty, I've received reports from 3 different sources tonight. Word of the evening's events has already spread beyond the palace walls. There are concerns about how this might be interpreted by other kingdoms, particularly those who have been watching for any signs of weakness in our monarchy." Elena paled slightly at this news. "I never intended to create political complications." Marcus turned to her, his expression not unkind but serious. "Princess, with respect, intentions matter less than perceptions when it comes to royal protocol. Our enemies are always looking for ways to undermine our stability." Isabella stood and moved to her desk, picking up a letter that had arrived earlier that day. "Marcus is right. I received this correspondence from King Frederick of Valeria this morning. He's been pushing for a more favorable trade agreement, and any sign of discord within our royal family would give him leverage in negotiations." "I don't understand," Elena said, looking genuinely confused. "How does my personal choice about curtsying affect trade agreements?" Marcus stepped forward, assuming his role as advisor as much as protector. "Princess, in the world of international politics, Every action by a royal family member is analyzed for meaning. If other rulers believe that Queen Isabella cannot command respect within her own family, they might question her ability to negotiate from a position of strength. Elena sank into the chair she had previously refused, the weight of these implications clearly overwhelming her. I never thought... I was only trying to honor my grandmother's memory. Isabella watched the young woman struggle with this new understanding and felt an unexpected surge of sympathy. She remembered her own early days as a young royal, when every decision seemed to carry consequences she hadn't anticipated. "Tell me more about this grandmother of yours," Isabella said, her tone gentler than before. "What was her story?" Elena looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes at the Queen's softer approach. Grandmother Mira was born in poverty, but she was brilliant. She taught herself to read and write, then earned a position as a tutor to noble children. Eventually, she became advisor to the royal court of Meridia. "Impressive," Marcus commented genuinely. "That kind of rise through society requires exceptional intelligence and determination." "Yes, but it came at a cost," Elena continued, her voice growing sad. She had to endure countless humiliations along the way. Nobles who looked down on her because of her birth, people who demanded she bow and scrape despite her obvious superiority in knowledge and wisdom. She used to tell me that she survived by never letting anyone make her feel small. Isabella exchanged a meaningful glance with Marcus. Both of them were beginning to understand the complexity of Elena's position. "So, when she was dying," Elena continued, "she made me promise that I would never let anyone diminish my worth through forced displays of submission. She said that true respect should be earned through actions, not demanded through ceremony." The room fell quiet as all three contemplated Elena's words. Isabella found herself thinking about her own grandmother, who had taught her very different lessons about duty and tradition. Marcus cleared his throat carefully. "Princess, I can appreciate your grandmother's wisdom, and her experiences clearly shaped her beliefs. But perhaps there's a way to honor her memory, while also fulfilling your duties as a member of this royal family?" Elena looked at him with interest. "What do you mean?" "Well," Marcus continued thoughtfully, "your grandmother fought against systems that judged people based on their birth rather than their merit. But Queen Isabella has always promoted people based on their abilities. She's appointed commoners to high positions when they've proven themselves worthy." Isabella nodded, recognizing the truth in Marcus's words. "He's right. Lord William, our treasurer, was born the son of a blacksmith. Lady Sarah, who heads our educational council, grew up on a farm. I've never believed that birth determines worth." Elena studied the Queen with new interest. I didn't know that about your appointees." "Perhaps," Isabella said slowly. "Your grandmother's fight and my own beliefs aren't as different as they initially appeared. We both value merit over birthright." Marcus sensed an opportunity and stepped forward. "Your Majesty?" "Princess Elena, may I suggest something? What if we could find a way to address both concerns? A solution that honors the princess's promise to her grandmother, while also maintaining the respect and protocol that our monarchy requires." Both women turned to look at him expectantly. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words could either solve this crisis or make it much worse. "What if we create a new tradition? Something that acknowledges Princess Elena's unique position and beliefs while still demonstrating respect for the crown?" Elena leaned forward, curiosity replacing her earlier distress. "What kind of new tradition?" "I'm thinking of something that your grandmother would have appreciated," Marcus said carefully. "A gesture that shows respect through substance rather than just form." Isabella found herself intrigued by Marcus's approach. In all his years of service, he had proven to be not just a skilled protector, but a thoughtful problem solver. Continue, Marcus. What exactly are you proposing? As Marcus began to outline his idea, Elena felt a spark of hope for the first time since entering the study. Perhaps there was a way to honor both her grandmother's memory and her new responsibilities. The solution wouldn't be simple, but the three of them working together might be able to find a path forward that satisfied everyone's needs. Outside the study windows, the palace gardens lay peaceful under the moonlight, but inside the room, the foundations of a new understanding were beginning to take shape. Marcus took a steadying breath before presenting his carefully considered proposal. Your Majesty, Princess Elena, what I'm suggesting is this. Instead of the traditional curtsy, what if Princess Elena demonstrates her respect through a meaningful action that aligns with both her values and the crown's interests? Elena tilted her head, intrigued but cautious. What sort of action? Something your grandmother would have admired, Marcus continued. A gesture that shows respect through service and substance rather than symbolic submission. For instance, Princess Elena could present Queen Isabella with a detailed report on social issues facing our kingdom, along with proposed solutions. This would demonstrate both respect for the Queen's authority and Elena's commitment to serving the people. Isabella considered this thoughtfully. That's actually quite innovative, Marcus. It would show that Elena respects my position as ruler by contributing meaningfully to governance rather than simply following empty rituals. Elena's eyes brightened for the first time that evening. Grandmother always said that the best way to honor someone is to work alongside them for the greater good. She would have loved this idea. There's more, Marcus added, warming to his theme. We could formalize this as a new royal tradition. Each time Princess Elena appears before the Queen in an official capacity, instead of curtsying, she could present a report of service, documenting her work on behalf of the kingdom's people. This acknowledges the Queen's supreme authority while allowing Elena to maintain her personal convictions. Isabella stood and moved to the window, looking out at the moonlit gardens as she processed the proposal. It's certainly unprecedented, but perhaps that's exactly what our kingdom needs, a tradition that emphasizes action over ceremony. Elena rose as well, moving to stand beside the Queen. Your Majesty, I want you to know that my reluctance to curtsy was never about disrespecting you personally. From what I've learned tonight about your appointments and your values, I believe we have more in common than I initially realized. Isabella turned to face Elena, and for the first time that evening, her expression held genuine warmth. I appreciate that, Elena. And I'm beginning to understand that your grandmother's influence on you wasn't about rebellion, but about maintaining dignity and purpose. Marcus stepped forward. Your Majesty, there's still the matter of the political implications. We need to address the concerns about how other kingdoms might interpret tonight's events. Isabella nodded. You're absolutely right, Marcus. King Frederick and others will be watching closely for any signs they can exploit. Elena straightened, determination replacing her earlier uncertainty. Then we should show them strength through unity, not conformity. If you're willing to support this new tradition, Your Majesty, I'll make sure my first report of service demonstrates exactly how committed I am to this kingdom's prosperity. What did you have in mind? Isabella asked. Elena's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. I've been researching the textile workers in the eastern provinces. They're struggling with outdated equipment and unfair wages from the major textile houses. With your permission, I'd like to propose a comprehensive reform program that could improve their working conditions while actually increasing overall productivity. Marcus raised his eyebrows, impressed. You've been researching this already? I've been preparing since the day Alexander and I announced our engagement, Elena replied. I knew I wanted to contribute meaningfully to this kingdom. But I also knew I needed to find a way to do it on terms that honored my grandmother's memory. Isabella found herself genuinely impressed by Elena's foresight and dedication. That's exactly the kind of substantial contribution that would make a powerful statement to both our own people and foreign observers. There's something else we should consider, Marcus added thoughtfully. If we're going to announce this new tradition, we should do it in a way that frames it positively. Not as an accommodation for Elena's refusal to curtsy, but as an innovative approach that emphasizes merit and service. Elena nodded eagerly. We could present it as a modernization of royal protocol, keeping the best aspects of tradition while adapting to emphasize substance over symbols. Isabella moved to her desk and picked up her fountain pen. Marcus, I want you to draft an official announcement for tomorrow morning. We'll present this new tradition as a forward-thinking evolution of our royal customs. As Marcus began taking notes, Elena felt compelled to address one more concern. Your Majesty, I'm worried about Prince Alexander. He was clearly uncomfortable tonight, and I don't want my choices to cause problems in our marriage. Isabella's expression softened with maternal concern. Alexander is a good man, but he's been raised with very traditional expectations. This change will require adjustment for him as well. Perhaps, Marcus suggested, Prince Alexander could be involved in presenting the new tradition. If he stands beside both of you when you announce it, it will show that the royal family is united in this decision. Elena smiled gratefully. That would mean everything to me. I never wanted to create division within the family. Isabella approached Elena and, for the first time that evening, reached out to take her hands. Elena, I owe you an apology. I assumed your actions tonight came from defiance or disrespect, but I can see now that they came from a place of deep love for someone who shaped your values. Elena's eyes misted slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. That means more to me than you can imagine. There's one more thing, Isabella continued. I'd like to hear more about your grandmother's story. If we're going to honor her influence on you, I think the court should understand the wisdom behind her beliefs. Over the next hour, Elena shared more stories about grandmother Mira's remarkable life, her struggles, her achievements, and the philosophy that had guided her through decades of serving in a world that often didn't value people like her. Isabella found herself moved by the older woman's resilience and impressed by the values she had instilled in Elena. As the clock struck midnight, Marcus finally set down his pen. I believe we have the framework for something truly remarkable here, a tradition that honors the past while embracing progress. Isabella stood and moved to the door. Marcus, please ask Prince Alexander to join us. It's time we brought him into this conversation. When Alexander arrived, his face still showing the strain of the evening's events, he was surprised to find the three of them working together rather than locked in conflict. As they explained the new tradition they had developed, his expression gradually shifted from worry to understanding to genuine enthusiasm. This is brilliant, he said finally. It's exactly what our kingdom needs, a way to honor tradition while embracing innovation. Elena took her husband's hand. Are you sure you're comfortable with this? I know it's not what you expected when you married me. Alexander squeezed her hand gently. Elena, I fell in love with your intelligence and your principles. I never wanted you to abandon them, just to fit into our existing molds. 2 weeks later, Astoria Palace hosted another grand ceremony, but this time the atmosphere was entirely different. Representatives from neighboring kingdoms had gathered to witness what was being called a historic modernization of royal protocol. Princess Elena stood before Queen Isabella, holding a beautifully bound document. Your Majesty, she began, her voice clear and confident, I present to you my first report of service, detailing proposed reforms for our textile industry that could improve working conditions for over 3,000 families while increasing our kingdom's economic competitiveness. Queen Isabella accepted the document with dignity and respect. "Thank you, Princess Elena. Your dedication to both thorough research and meaningful action exemplifies the very best of royal service." The assembled guests applauded enthusiastically, and Captain Marcus, watching from his position near the throne, allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The crisis that had threatened to divide the royal family had instead become the catalyst for a tradition that other kingdoms were already expressing interest in adopting. As the ceremony concluded, Elena caught sight of a portrait of Queen Isabella's grandmother hanging on the far wall. The painted woman's expression seemed stern and traditional, but Elena had learned that she too had been an innovator in her time, introducing several reforms that had strengthened the kingdom. That evening, as Elena and Alexander walked through the palace gardens, she reflected on how much had changed since that tense dinner 2 weeks earlier. "Do you think Grandmother Mira would have approved?" she asked her husband. Alexander considered this carefully. "I think she would have been proud that you found a way to honor her teachings while building something new and positive. Isn't that exactly what she did with her own life?" Elena smiled, realizing he was right. Her grandmother had never been about rigid adherence to rules, but about finding ways to create positive change while maintaining personal integrity. As they returned to the palace, Elena was already thinking about her next report of service. She had identified several other areas where thoughtful reform could make a real difference in people's lives. The new tradition hadn't just solved a protocol crisis, it had given her a meaningful way to contribute to the kingdom she was learning to love. Queen Isabella, watching from her study window as the young couple returned from their walk, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The evening that had begun with protocol breach had ended with the creation of something that would strengthen both the monarchy and the kingdom for years to come. Marcus appeared beside her, having finished his final security rounds for the evening. "A successful resolution, Your Majesty." Isabella nodded, but her thoughts were already moving forward. "More than that, Marcus. I think we've discovered something important about the balance between tradition and progress. Sometimes honoring the past means being willing to build something new." As the palace settled into peaceful quiet for the night, all three of them knew that they had been part of something special. A moment when understanding triumphed over conflict, and when different perspectives had combined to create something better than any of them could have achieved alone.